They're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season, the 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great.
Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, good morning. Welcome in. Off the Bench, off and rolling here on a Tuesday. Justin Kenner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett, and yes, Casey McAllister. Make that 2 days in a row.
That's big time.
Holding it down over there. Casey, good morning. I know I've been trying to chomp down that Pop-Tart over there. I started talking to him in mid-chomp. But
we started early.
Yeah,
you can't blame him.
Started.
He's not going to be ready. It's 10:04.
For being late, we started
Yeah,
early.
right.
Yeah, but Casey, good morning. How are we?
Good morning. Good.
That
Good.
voice is deep today. I feel like you were yeeting last night. Were you yeeting at the old, what's it called in Cincinnati?
No, I was not yeeting.
Big WWE fan? You were?
I'm starting to get into the universe a little bit more. And it started with the Royal Rumble, and I don't know if our fans watched the Royal Rumble or not, but Jey Uso ended up winning, beating John Cena, and I didn't like that. I'm a John Cena fan, and the fandom of WWE is just brainwashed. I mean, they love Jey Uso. I'm like, what the hell is that? What the hell is that? He's awful. Awful. I hope Gunther destroys him.
Yeah,
in the
Gunther's
heavyweight
my guy.
championship. That's my guy. Gunther's my guy.
We just had Jey Uso on my show yesterday, so I'm very glad that we didn't bring him on the show today and just have you absolutely eviscerate the guy.
I wouldn't have been able to have him on the show.
All
I
that
would have
that
eviscerated
voice
him.
is freaking badass.
Yeah.
Like, that voice you have right now is...
It's real raspy this morning.
Are you saying that I should, maybe yell a little bit more?
Probably.
Yeet less, yell more,
Exactly.
I'm just saying.
No yeeting. No yeeting. Just yell more and tell them how much he sucks.
Fair enough. Elliot, how about you? Were you yeeting last night? What were you up to last
No,
night?
I did not yeet.
Have you yeeted in the last, decade?
No, I don't believe so. I don't know what that means. But yeah, I was just at home. I worked out last night, and that was about it. That was the extent of my evening.
Back on your grind after the weekend off?
That's right. Back on the grind. So back on the
go.
old grindstone. And it feels great. Feels great. By the way, didn't they just have a WWE event in Cincinnati? I feel like it wasn't that long ago since we've had one.
It was over the summer. Poor Casey. He
Was
took
it over
another
the summer?
bite. He took another bite right as someone goes back to. But yes, it was over the summer.
Okay,
But
I
yeah.
see. And is it the same? Is it the same thing?
No, this was WWE Raw on Netflix.
So this is different than the regular one?
They do a good job of having about 30 different events.
So they have Raw, SmackDown, and then they'll do live shows that aren't TV tapings.
And Raw and,
gotcha.
Raw and
Yeah.
SmackDown are two different things.
Yeah,
They're not the same people.
That's when it's real. It's real on SmackDown and Raw is
Okay.
when it's real. The non-TV televised events, fake.
Gotcha.
I see.
That's the breakdown.
Yeah.
I see.
But I mean, you haven't done a WWE Raw recap in a while. I mean, that was in
No.
the middle of
That's
summer.
electric.
Remember, it was the middle. Actually, I think that might have been the last time you did it. You did the Raw recap because there was literally, I think it was the All-Star break.
Yeah.
Nothing going on. There was only so much trade talk for the Reds of what will they do at the trade deadline that we could have fought through at the
That's
time.
true.
So,
That's true.
but keep it locked in right here because we're going to talk about what the Reds are going to do before the deadline coming up, I'm sure. But Jacob, obviously you weren't eating, but we welcome
I was
you.
not, but still a fine evening. Still a fine evening. We move. It's Tuesday, always happens after Monday.
Silver Bullets hat.
That's
I
right.
like it.
Thank you.
Tuesday, by far the worst day of the week.
Distantly.
By the way, no one. I mean, we made an agreement before the show. We're not going to ignore what's going on outside these doors.
Can't do it. Way too loud.
So I'm not really. I mean, I have an idea based on what you guys have said, but they are relocating all of their stuff upstairs, correct?
It would appear that way, and I don't know where the ramp is in this building, but in order to get everything up there, they're just dragging it, and it's
I
about.
hope they're not taking on that sketchy ass elevator. I don't think that thing could barely hold people, much less desks and everything else.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll know when they start moving things because, again, they drag it across
They
the
do.
floor.
They do.
So Casey was pissed because he said he looked out the window yesterday and there was just one individual just dragging the desk.
That's
just
right.
dragging it across the
What I don't get, what I can't understand, and I love the guys out there. I really do. So I hope any of those that are listening that are from Headlines, whatever, love you guys, love your support. But you can't have just one person dragging the desk from one side of the room to the other side of the room.
Such
by
great
themselves.
distances.
Big
when,
desk.
when you have multiple people moving stuff around, like I don't get it.
And
You're
not
just-
one person said, "Hey, Timmy, let me get the other side for you."
Yeah, like
me
no
lift it
one
for you.
offered to help that one person dragging the tables across, and it happened multiple times yesterday. I was like, how is this possible?
Doge would be so disappointed. I mean, so disappointed at the end of the day.
One of their 5 bullet points is fold the desk across the floor.
So next week when you have to report, what did you do last week? Well,
Yeah.
there was this desk. We had to move it. So there you go. But yes, Tuesday, the worst day of the week, according to our guy, Elliot. But let's see, while you were working out last night, how much sports you were paying attention to. Let's send it to our guy, Elliot, for Elliot's headlines.
Score updates, breaking news, local and national headlines, whatever's going on in the world of sports, Elliot has you covered. Off the Bench brings you Elliot's headlines.
They didn't do it. Revenge for yesterday.
How about Tuesday?
You're right. Headlines. Kansas, they went on the road last night. They beat Colorado 71-64. Unranked Kansas for the first time in 1,400 days. Went on the road and beat Colorado. Fourth-ranked Houston, they played last night against 10th-ranked Texas Tech on the road, and they come away with an 8-point victory, 69-61 the final score. And 15th-ranked Michigan, they survived on the road as well at Nebraska in a low-scoring shootout. How about that? A low-scoring shootout I wrote down in my headlines, which makes no sense whatsoever. NBA news from last night. The Timberwolves, they went on the road in overtime to beat the Thunder 131-128. SGA dropped 39. Ant Edwards, he dropped 27. The Pistons, they've won 7 in a row. They beat the Clippers last night 106-97. So good for the Pistons, the Detroit Pistons. Jimmy tweeted at us last night.
He did.
Is this what the 12-game winning streak felt like? Not quite, Jim.
That
Not
would
quite.
be what a 7-game winning streak feels
That is
like.
what. That's a 7-game winning streak. It's a little bit different than 12. The Chicago Bulls, they played as well. They beat the 76ers 142-110. 142-110. Josh Giddey was the leading scorer in that game with 25 points.
Funny thing about the Sixers right now, they're currently the 8th worst team in the NBA. Their pick is top 6 protected. So they're trying their hardest to finish as a bottom 6
Really?
team so they can keep their draft pick. If they finish somewhere between like the 6 to 10 range, they'll be really bad and lose their pick. So a tough spot for them.
Here's another nugget. The Chicago Bulls are 23-35.
Yeah.
They are 23-35. They hold the last wild card spot currently.
Fun.
Or the
Not
last
the wild
playoff
card.
spot, the play-in spot.
Yeah, that's right.
The last play-in spot at 23-35. Good for them. The Wizards, they ended a 6-game losing streak last night with a win over the Nets, 107-99. And tonight, the Lakers host the Mavericks at 10 p.m., where Luka will play the Mavericks for the first time since being traded. That'll be must-see television, I imagine, around 10 p.m. tonight.
Taking all the overs.
All the overs.
Luka's going to...
Luka,
Stick it
LeBron,
to 'em.
well, not the Mavericks overs.
Well, they don't have players.
They don't have players.
Yeah. Defensive team.
They were working on their defense. NHL news. I saw this little cool nugget. Pictures started coming out because the Blue Jackets and the Red Wings are playing a game in Columbus.
Yeah.
At the Ohio State University.
Stadium looks very cool. There was a rendering that came up earlier today of what it's going to look like. Looks awesome. I think the Stadium Series has worked very, very well. They played one in Wrigley earlier this year that had great attendance for the Blackhawks. I think this is going to be a really fun game on Saturday night. Tickets were really expensive last week, but starting to come down a little bit. If you fall in love with hockey during the Four Nations and want to see a game, maybe go up to Columbus this weekend.
Let me ask
Looks
you.
like a good
Let me
time.
ask you
I'm gonna try to
this:
go.
how are people going to see the puck at the very top? Of the
Well, I
stadium?
think it's more drinking.
Okay. All right. So it's okay.
And just taking it in like a cool, like
Yeah.
you went to when Ohio State played Northwestern at Wrigley.
Yeah.
It wasn't the most football friendly setup.
One of the worst.
But
you can still see the ball, though.
oh,
Not on the
yeah.
other side of the field, sitting in the outfield. It was pretty
right.
bad.
All right. Well, you could still see a
But,
little bit.
yeah.
You can't see a puck from 100 million
Well,
feet
I would
up in the air.
imagine the giant jumbotrons would be showing you where the puck is as well.
That's
I
true.
think a lot of people go just for that like experience. Like,
Yeah.
Have you been to a Final Four?
Yeah, I have. I was in the Final Four in Indianapolis. They had that at least at the time they had TVs. If you were in the last like 5 rows,
Yeah.
There's something you could at least.
so we could see it from
like
that.
a lot of people I've talked to that have gone like it's you're not really. I mean, you're watching the game, but you're not. It's just you're taking in the atmosphere of watching a college basketball game. Sorry, that more loud noises. Loud noises. But yeah, with 80,000 people in attendance or whatever. But yeah, I think it's more about the drinking, the experience, being outside, that type of thing. But
NFL news: the Packers, they're trying to ban the tush push.
They are.
So I guess they saw Jordan Love. Jacob showed me the clip yesterday of Jordan Love trying to run it, he couldn't do it. So he's like, if we can't do it, nobody else can either. So the Packers will be trying to ban that. And finally, Major League Baseball news: Cleveland Guardians owner Lawrence Dolan passed away at age 94. Is there like a succession plan there? I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything about that, but I know the main owner, Lawrence Dolan, has passed away at 94. And finally, the Cincinnati Reds, they win a game yesterday, 8-1. 8-1. They beat the Dodgers.
Take that.
So they can pay all they want, but we're going to still beat them 8-1 in a game that didn't matter at all. We have Brady Singer, 2 innings, 2 hits, 0 earned runs, 4 strikeouts. Spires had 5 strikeouts, did give up a run, though, in his 2 innings of work. Suter, inning of scoreless baseball. Pagan, inning of scoreless. Santillan, inning of scoreless. So everybody played pretty well, and then that includes Austin Hayes. Austin Hayes, 2 home runs, 6 RBIs in yesterday's game against the Dodgers. So
he's the answer.
He's the answer. He's the prayer that we've always been thinking about.
We were very upfront yesterday. We said if it goes well in spring training, we will overreact.
Correct.
And we're doing that.
That's right.
Yep, and we're going to overreact more about our friend Austin Hayes on the other side because I think we all got crawled.
I think everyone else got crawled.
Did we all get crawled? I mean, I
think
don't
we
know.
did.
Let's talk about it. We'll be right back. Austin Hayes, big day. Spring training action yesterday. We overreacted to Ellie De La Cruz. Should we do it for Austin Hayes? That's what we'll do when we come back. More off the bench when we return. Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here, along with Casey McAllister in the producer chair, off and rolling off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Happy Tuesday. I want to get into Austin Hayes and the Reds and the big day he had yesterday. And before that, I meant to use this in the first segment, but take a look. When you go to a game, and PA announcers, they get real creative with their calls, especially now that the 3-point shot is a dominating part of the game. I don't know if you need your headsets for that. You probably will. So every time a 3-pointer was made in this game, and again, I know nothing about Mississippi Valley or Prairie View A&M. I'm sure one of you are big fans of one
Jacob
of these teams.
was.
But listen, every time a 3-pointer was made in this game, tell me if this is entertaining or if this is annoying. Take a listen.
Bush, he'll stop and spot for the 3-point shot. Looks good, yeah.
Bush shooting at 50% from the 3-point line tonight.
Donald Carroll, Bush, he'll stop and spot for the 3-point shot. Looks good, yeah.
Bush shooting at 50%.
I want to like it. I really do. I want to like it, but I can't. The fact that the guy has dribbled the ball probably 10 seconds into the opposing team's shot clock, and you're still hearing the sirens and the sounds in the back, that's overkill, right? Can we all agree that that's overkill?
Yeah, the only reason the goal horn works in hockey and whatever the song is they do in soccer, the only reason that works is because it stops the game. Like, the game is stopped when the goal is scored.
I'm trying to see
You can't do a goal horn for a shot in basketball. It's a continuous game.
I should have looked up how many threes
I was
going to
say, I'm trying to find that. Mississippi Valley State, by the way, 3-25 on this young season. Let me try to find it. But continue on. That is one of the more annoying sounds.
How are they supposed to call the next possession?
I don't know.
They can't. They weren't. They can't.
Oh, that is truly horrendous.
Yeah, that was really bad. Thank you for sharing that.
I thought it was just the voice at first. I was like, oh, come on. Like, I didn't mind the voice at first. Now, in an empty arena, it's kind of overkill, just the voice. But then with all the sound effects and everything else, just a little much. But for one of those teams, you said Prairie View, A&M, whatever, is three team?
3 wins. By the way, I can't use my mouse on my computer, so we're doing only touch screen.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
Your computer has some fun little quirks.
It does. 6 of 18. 6 of 18.
So only 6 minutes of
Only 6 minutes of
Three-point
that
calls.
horrible siren.
So 1:20 of that game was that.
yeah.
Overkill. I'm glad we can all agree.
No, that
on
was.
We all don't agree on much, but I think we all agree that was a little overkill nonetheless. What was also overkill yesterday was Austin Hayes.
Nice.
How about him? Yeah.
That was good.
It was good effort.
That was all right.
I stole home and almost got tagged out, but it's fine.
Yeah, Austin Hayes' 2 home runs last night. He had 5 all of last year with 2 different teams in 85 games. So we're almost there. We're almost already at the total from last year if you count spring training ball. I'm not going to get too excited over this. I know people will, and that's fine. You could also get pissed off at the fact that Noelvi Marte had a horrible error towards the end of that game. I can't write too much into it. Austin Hayes, if he is a contributor to the Reds in 2025, then we have something special going, because that's a name that I don't think anybody is talking about being a serious contributor. I think he should be maybe talked about as that, but if you go around, the Reds fandom and say, hey, what do you think about Austin Hayes? I'd imagine not a lot of people know who that is. So I think if he's able to somehow get the power of Thor and hit home runs like he did yesterday, then we're in for a very, very good season.
Yeah, I think obviously, like Elliot said, you don't want to get too wrapped up in a guy having a big spring training game, but it's hard not to when it's a guy that it's Austin Hayes and you need an outfield bat, and if he's going to show you that he has the power and a little bit of, you can't say consistency after one game, but showing a little bit of that form that we've seen in years past from him, it's exciting to see, because we talked about it when we made the signing last year. He was obviously hurt almost the entirety of the year, but the year before in 2023, he was an all-star. And then every year before that, he was a more than serviceable player that would have garnered way more than a 1-year, $5 million deal on the market. We just got him there for that discount price because of the injury he was coming back from last season. I think if this is a shadow of the version of Austin Hayes we get this year, it's a wonderful signing and could be the outfielder that we wanted them to sign. If it was after the 2023 season and the Reds went out and got Austin Hayes as the addition, I think a lot of people in the city would have said that's our outfielder. That's a great signing. So maybe we get closer to that form, and this is the first step of getting there. It was certainly great to see him, look a little bit like that old version of himself.
I'll never forget when Shogo Akiyama, he did hit a home run in that COVID series, or the COVID season preseason. If you remember, we just played like an exhibition against the Tigers before opening day against the Tigers. So basically, they were just doing little mini exhibitions before the season started in that COVID year. And Shogo took one to deep straightaway center field. And I'm like, this is going to be our power outfielder. I love Shogo. Never hit another home run with the Cincinnati Reds. So had finished his Reds career with officially 0. So I'm not going to get too worked up over the Austin Hayes 2 home run game in spring training against the Dodgers.
22, 16, 16 home runs his last 3 healthy seasons.
Okay.
So at least a serviceable bat in terms of that.
Oh, Shogo Akiyama. You mean our power-hitting leadoff hitter that batted 7th? Yeah, that guy?
Yeah.
What a great signing.
The memories. There was some excitement there. I remember when they announced it. It was a big deal. It just, like most things for anything Cincinnati sports related, it did not work out. Look, as far as Austin Hayes is concerned, I get it. That's the thing, though. When it comes to spring training, when it comes to preseason with anything, what are the rules? Are we not allowed to be happy for anything? Are we not allowed to cheer anything or be upset at anything? Like, what's worse? You bring up a great point. What's worse? Being upset at Noelvi Marte for the error and blunder, yesterday, or not overreacting, but being excited about the big performance with the bat in his hands from Austin Hayes. What are the rules? Are we not allowed to be upset? We're not allowed to be happy? What are the rules with spring training?
Spring training is pretty much you just get to be happy. That's you should just be happy and see the progress, because I don't think there's really any reason to get upset about anything that happens during spring training, because it's not real baseball. Now it's a little bit hypocritical to then go and cheer for everything that happens.
Yeah.
But that's just the way it is. It's the preseason. It doesn't really matter. But if you want to see your guys do something cool, that's what this is for. Noelvi Marte is one of the few names I would say that people are looking for mistakes. He committed one yesterday, and that's an unfortunate place to be, but it doesn't appear like he's a serious contender to make the Major League opening day roster.
No, and I think that the hardest part is, if you get really into spring training, you obviously are going to overreact to 2 home run games from Elliot and Austin Hayes, but you can't get too low. I think a lot of people, you either get really excited and really upset, or you don't care at all.
Correct.
Like, I think it's very hard to find people that just focus on the highlights. I think with, obviously social media and how much it's picked up, it certainly helps because you just see the good things. But the people that are watching the games, I feel like they both overreact positively and negatively to everything in spring training. I think that's just part of what comes with it, because if you're watching, 5-10 spring training games, you obviously, live and breathe baseball. So you care a lot more about, what's going to happen with the Reds, and you try to project everything that goes on there. And I think, there's a lot of negativity that comes out of spring training too. So just trying to find the middle ground of not getting too high on guys because they played a few good games, not getting too low on guys because they made a few mistakes. I think that's the hardest part about watching spring training.
And it's not even that. It's like the games, like the umpires last night. There was a debate on whether or not the Reds had a run for the entirety of the game.
When they very clearly did.
When they very clearly had a run. The score wouldn't update it. I don't think the umpires in the field counted it.
The two radio broadcasts had different scores that they were saying.
So it's like
that
that's
just screams preseason baseball right
And
there.
by the way, you can bet on this.
You sure can.
So if you want to bet on it, go ahead and feel free to do so. I just think it's wild, man.
The StatCast has been a nightmare too.
It
for
had
the first couple games.
Well, just think of the people that bet the run total in that. You're on the edge of your seat the entire game.
Yeah.
The entire game.
There's no way of knowing.
The Reds tweeted Austin Hayes 6 RBIs unless one gets taken away.
I like the transparency, to be quite honest. Look, I didn't put a lot of energy into the error by Noelvi Marte, just because a little bit to your guys' point. I mean, are we really expecting him to be the opening day third baseman? I am not.
No.
So I'm not putting a lot of stock there. If Austin Hayes has just a single yesterday with a couple strikeouts, am I overreacting to that? No, I am not. But it is nice to see that he says he's healthy coming into this season. He was not healthy last year. So people that were down on the signing because of last year, Austin Hayes, if he had the season he did 2 seasons ago and was available, he's picked up a lot earlier in the offseason than what the timing of the Reds. People are skeptical, doubt a little bit about, because of his numbers last year, is he healthy? He's healthy because of that performance yesterday. We probably won't see a game throughout the entire 162-game stretch where he has 2 home runs and 6 RBIs in a game, and that's totally fine. I just like that he's seeing the ball well. He's able to put the bat on the ball, put the ball in play, knock it out of the ballpark, obviously bat some runs in. At the end of the day, I'm beyond impressed with that from yesterday, and that it has nothing to do with the score, result. I don't care about any of that. I am going to put stock in individual performances, not so much, oh man, the Reds beat. I saw Chatterbox put out they beat up on the Dodgers, and some people got all upset about that. I don't care about the outcome of the games themselves, but I was impressed with Austin Hayes. And if he is a guy to provide some cheap power in the outfield, get crawled, baby.
That's right.
That's what it is all about, getting
Correct.
crawled.
And the thing about spring training too is we're still in that early part, like you said yesterday. Like this is like we're still somewhat invested.
Honeymoon stage, right?
Yeah, we're still somewhat invested in spring training right now. In about 2.5 weeks, I'll be completely out on spring training, not paying attention even a little bit, because that's just it. We're gearing up for the season. I'm ready for opening day. I know we got to do the whole spring training thing. We got to have a couple little mini tryouts, I guess, if you want to call them that, to see who's going to make this roster, and that's what I'm going to be looking for the rest of the way. But do I care really what Ellie De La Cruz or Hunter Green does in spring training? Not even a little bit, because I know those two guys are the best players on this Reds team, and no matter what they do during the spring, it's not going to change my mind on that.
Yeah.
Ellie, if the opposite though happens, if Ellie does not have a hit 2-3 games in the spring,
Doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter a little bit. It wouldn't even be a talking point for me, because it's just I can't expect these guys to come out there and say they're playing Major League Baseball when they're not. They're playing against, I mean, I guess Ellie has taken at-bats against Major Leaguers, but, once you get later into the spring, when you're starting to vamp down a little bit on who out there is playing and who's throwing as many innings as possible. Usually these guys are going 1 inning, and then you get to the kind of I don't want to call them scrubs, but the guys at the end of the roster are coming to pitch. Like, that's just what I don't care. I don't care at that point.
Fair enough. Off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Again, we've seen multi-home run games from Ellie De La Cruz to this point. Multi-home run game yesterday, of course, from Austin Hayes. Has everybody excited? Some of us are excited nonetheless. But Reds are off today from a spring training standpoint. By the way, I've been trying to follow how other teams are approaching this as well. Like, the Reds are playing a lot of their guys, and they're giving them a lot of time early. It's a little different approach. I mean, we do this with football in the NFL preseason, like playing starters versus not.
Yeah.
Obviously, maybe the Reds could ramp it down as the spring training goes on, while other teams ramp it up. I don't know what the secret sauce is. sounds like doesn't really technically matter as long as nobody's getting hurt. I think that's the big deal. But it is interesting. Yes, are the Reds going up against a full slate of starters for the other team? No, I don't really care about that. But I do like the tone that we're seeing set by Terry Francona. We're throwing everyone out there. We want everyone to get off to a hot start because baseball, more than anything, is confidence. So that's why I do think that stuff matters. We don't track the stats in spring training, but if Austin Hayes has a hell of a spring training, right now, confidence-wise, what is his confidence coming off of a down season where he was battling injuries? Confidence wasn't too high. I think it's through the roof right now after yesterday's performance. So that's why I'm going to put a lot of stock into spring training from that standpoint. Baseball is so mental that if you have a great spring and take confidence into opening day, take confidence into the, into March, late March and April, I think that is huge. So that's where I'll push back and say from that standpoint, I absolutely put a lot of stock into what we've seen the first couple of days.
I think the other thing that I always try to look at in terms of the output, because exactly what you're saying there, these guys only pitch, 1-2 innings if you're a starter, 1 inning out of the pen, and then you get down to some of the guys that aren't even close to a major league roster. So I always try to look at what the output, who it's coming against.
Yeah.
And both of Hayes' home runs yesterday, first one off Blake Trinan, and then the second one off Tanner Scott. So 2 top of the end Dodgers bullpen relievers. I think that holds a lot more weight than just having 2 spring training home runs. Like the fact that it's coming against, top of the end Dodgers bullpen guys, major league relievers, I think that does kind of stand out more than just your, normal spring training stats. And that was the case with Elliot in the first game too. His first hit, or his first home run came off the starter in that game. I forget who it was, but it was a major league pitcher as well. And I think that does kind of separate itself from the rest of the spring training stats, at least early, getting hits off Tyler Glasnow and Blake Trinan and, all those guys. I think that does mean something.
All right, Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. MLB Network, they spun the wheel, and they were doing their Mount Rushmore for every team in Major League Baseball, and lo and behold, the Cincinnati Reds, they pop up on the wheel. And their Mount Rushmore I didn't think was bad, but it led to a lot of, discourse on the old social media chain. So we'll get to that when we come back. More Off the Bench when we return. All right, and we are back. Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. Casey McAllister in the producer chair. We are off and rolling here on a Tuesday. Of course, we talked about the big spring training win that the Reds had over the Dodgers. The Dodgers are shaking in their boots. If there's one team that just don't want to run into in the postseason, it's the Cincinnati Reds.
Reds have beaten them the past couple of seasons. So
I mean, to be fair, they have had success over, the Reds have always struggled on those little West Coast trips, but there's something about the Dodgers.
I don't know what
it is. To be fair,
to
try out.
Yeah,
I think they see the opportunity of if we play really well, we could play here one day.
Yeah, Elliot loves playing the Dodgers.
Yeah, well, I think it's.
He loves it.
Why is that, Jacob?
I don't know.
Maybe because he's playing against his teammates.
Yeah.
I think it's God's cruel joke to us that we can beat the Dodgers during the regular season because we know we'd never beat them in the postseason or get to the postseason for that matter.
For generations before us, it was always, he'll be a great Yankee one day. Now we're growing up saying he'll be a great Dodger one day.
He will be.
Yeah, Ellie's hitting .294 with 2 home runs, 5 RBIs, and 11 runs scored in 12 games against the Dodgers.
I mean, in a roster that has Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani, just thinking
How many RBIs?
How many?
It says 5 in 12 games.
But, hey, that's not a bad roster. Considering you have Shohei Ohtani and, of course, you have Mookie Betts, in the next 3 or 4 years, you're going to be adding Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Ellie De La Cruz. I mean, that's a pretty good roster in 2029.
Yankees getting back in the mix for those guys, though, with the no beard rule being gone.
That's right. That's right.
Opened up the door to so many more candidates and options to bolster that roster. But anyways.
Reds expectations. I can't wait to have my opinion fluctuate on what they're going to do this year. Like every single night, it's just going to be live or die. That's the real reason I don't get into spring training is because I already go back and forth on what are the Reds, right? You win a game against San Francisco, you lose a game against Milwaukee, and it's like, all right, now what are we? Are we dead? Are we alive? And I just go back and forth. I'm reactionary. I'm a reactionary guy. Everybody knows this. I think Haro in the chat called me a pessimist. I certainly am regarding Cincinnati sports.
Self-aware.
I like to think so, but if you want to call me that, you can call me that because We haven't seen a lot of success. I'm hoping this is the year that changes it, and I think truly it will be. They start off the season rough. Like we went over the schedule a couple weeks ago. They still start off the season pretty rough with a tough schedule, and then after that, the last half of the month, I would say it's pretty not easy, but easier certainly than the first half. So just take your time. I'm hoping the Reds stay healthy, and that's my biggest thing. As of right now, I still hold we're through 5 games of spring training. My opinion hasn't changed. I still think they're going over 78.5. They're going to finish with right around 83 wins.
They're going to be tough to beat when you got Elliot averaging 2 home runs a game.
That's
and
right.
Austin Hayes averaging 2 home
That's
runs
right.
a game. In spring training, I trust, baby.
Yeah, if Elliot hits 1,000 this year, I think the Reds are going to be pretty good.
I agree. That's what we're talking about now, gentlemen.
He hits 1,000. The Dodgers can't afford him.
No, that's true.
Brady Singer looked good yesterday too. I know we touched on that, but Brady Singer.
Yeah.
I'm not going to realistically expect that every single move the Reds made this offseason to work, right? It's just not a fair expectation to have. But if you look at what Jonathan India did for the Reds, and if you look at what Brady Singer could do for this rotation, I would take Brady Singer. I think Brady Singer can bolster down one of the best lineups or one of the best rotations, in my opinion, in the National League. I think it's going to be consistent if they're healthy. I think it's going to be solid if they're healthy. I think these guys are going to go 5-6 innings every single time, not allowing a lot of earned runs. I think you're going to have a pretty solid starting rotation to at least start the year. We know what happens somewhere around July, but as of right now to start, I think Brady Singer could be the guy that helps cement what could be a top 10 major league rotation. He's just really good. And this is not even factoring in Nick Lodolo, right? I think Hunter Green is the number one. You need Hunter Green to be good this year. After that, I would say Nick Martinez might be the second most important pitcher. You're paying him $21 million. We don't know officially what role that's going to be based on what Terry Francona said, based on what Nick Martinez has said. He's going to be the starting pitcher, certainly to start. If that's the case, right, you have Nick Martinez, you have Hunter Green pitching up to their expectation. The third guy, in my opinion, really is Brady Singer. I think I trust him more than Nick Lodolo at this very second. I love Andrew Abbott, but is Andrew Abbott going to be a guy that's going to be able to stay healthy? I don't know. Brady Singer has been very, very good, and I think that if he's able to pitch, he has been over the past few years, then we're going to be looking at this rotation a lot differently than we are right now, which is with optimism and hope that they're going to be healthy and good. I think he's going to cement our opinion in that, and that's what it's going to be this year. He looked good yesterday. I know we don't write into spring training stuff, but Brady Singer is one of my big X factors for the Reds.
A lot of those, not that Brady Singer is a question mark. We know exactly what role he's gonna try to play in the Reds this year. But a lot of those pitchers that we were excited to see have looked good so far. We talked about Ashcraft over the weekend having a good outing. Nick Martinez started off hot. So it really there hasn't been, outside of Noelvi Marte, there hasn't been a huge negative around the Reds so far in spring training. And that's the biggest thing to take away is you usually have to try to split yourself between getting too high and getting too low on a lot of these things. The Reds just haven't had a lot of negatives so far, and hopefully they can continue mostly with the lack of injuries.
Yeah, Hunter Green, I think, has had the worst outing.
The biggest scare, Jake Fraley got hit in the hand with a pitch yesterday. He was able to stay in the game, but with what happened last year and how many Reds got hit in the hand with pitches and missed time, that was scary to see. But he was able to stay in the game, so hopefully dodge that one.
You said something that got my attention of all the Reds additions. We do this with the Bengals as well. Like all the offseason additions, like they're not all going to work out. And you look at Gavin Lux, you look at Austin Hayes, you look at Rogers, you look at Brady Singer. Obviously, you could. I don't know how to evaluate the Martinez. I mean, that wasn't an addition, but you retained him. You obviously bring in Terry Francona, to lean into the pessimistic side of this. Not all of these guys, you're right. I mean, maybe they could. Maybe every move could play a huge role in the team's success this season. But of all those moves, Elliot, you said that there's a chance that not all of these are going to hit. What's the probability? What's the highest probability of these guys not working out? Like, which individual do you think has the highest probability of not making an impact? We're not being negative, but you're right. Not every move. Like, we bring in every guy with the expectation of what they've proven at this point to their career and kind of hope and count on them reaching a ceiling, of course. But not every one of these guys is going to hit. You're right. All of these guys that were brought in to kind of fill a role, though, which one has the highest probability of possibly not working out for the Reds in 25?
I think Trevino is going to be consistent. I think that's a guy that we can rely upon this year. He's not going to put up any sort of, showcasing stats, right? I don't think he's going to put up massive numbers, but I think he's going to be someone you rely upon. I think Brady Singer is also going to be somebody you rely upon when it comes to just being consistent, being available. I think the one I think the one that I have the most, I guess, issues with, not even issues with, but most doubt in is Austin Hayes. You know, there's so many X factors, or I guess role players out in right field. Is it going to be Jake Fraley? Is it going to be Austin Hayes? Is Will Benson going to be able to compete for that spot out there? There are a lot of different options out there, and who's going to make their mark. I would say Austin Hayes is going to have the least amount of opportunity to make his mark, which makes him at least the most liable to not succeed.
Yeah,
in my eyes. I think Gavin Lux is going to be a contributor. I think Gavin Lux is going to be good. So that puts all focus pretty much on Austin Hayes. I think the relievers will be fine. I think it's just, you come into this year hoping for an outfield bat. You didn't really get one. Austin Hayes is the one that you got. Is he going to be able to contribute at a high level? I don't know. And that's the one I have the most questions with. That's the one I have the most doubt with. So certainly a game like yesterday helps his case a little bit.
His lack of contribution, or potential lack of contribution to the Reds, might be no fault of his own either. If Jake Fraley and Will Benson, a lot of those guys that are already out there, take another step and are closer to what we thought they could be last year. So I think he's the obvious answer, and more because we don't really know what we're asking of a lot of the other guys. I think Brady Singer's been consistent in his career. There's not a lot of reason to worry about him, but Trevino's a backup catcher who's not going to be asked to do a whole lot.
Yeah.
We don't really know where Gavin Lux is going to play, but we all seem pretty confident that he's going to be able to do something to help this team win. And I certainly agree with Elliot. I think there's definitely a world where Austin Hayes gets shoved to the bench where he could still be a fine player, and we just have 3 better outfielders.
Austin Hayes, is he in right field on opening day?
He won't be. I don't believe he'll be starting. I don't know who's the starting pitcher right now.
I don't know.
So if I knew that information,
I guess
it's lefty righty.
righty.
It's all lefty righty in the outfield. I don't think any one of them, either Jake Fraley or him, have earned that spot as of yet. I think Jake Fraley's a guy everybody's sleeping on right now. Jake Fraley's going to be a good baseball player. Last year, too much went on behind the scenes. Too much went on on the field in terms of injuries for him to have a successful season. Jake Fraley's going to be a contributor for the Reds this year. And I still believe Jake Fraley's going to earn that right field spot.
The All-Star Hayes from 2 years ago, if that's who the Reds have, does that change your outlook on anything?
Yeah, it changes the outlook on the entire season. If the Reds have a good to serviceable outfield, then it changes everything. Because that's the one area that I would say most Reds fans still have concern about right now. I think the bullpen's fine. I think the starting rotation, people have high hopes. We have one of the best catchers in the National League. We have maybe the best shortstop in the National League. Second base, maybe the best middle infield in the National League. If you had to, pinpoint question marks, it's right field, it's first base, and or third base. So those are the 3 positions we really don't know what's going to happen yet this year. We have an idea, but we don't know for sure. And I think if you're able to cement that outfield position and you're able to have a healthy TJ Friedel, Spencer Steer, Jake Fraley, and on top of that have Austin Hayes hit 20 home runs this year, then this is going to be a competitive roster, and I still think that they have a chance to win the NL Central.
2023, Austin Hayes, when he was an All-Star, he hit 280 against righties, 265 against lefties, 325 OBP against righties, 330 OBP against lefties. So if he can get back to that, then he could certainly carve out an everyday role in the outfield.
Because a lot of the reports are the only reason he didn't eclipse that last year was just because of the kidney issues.
Yeah.
Not
that's
small issues. But, yeah, that would be a huge, obviously, upgrade for the Reds if they were able to pull that off. You guys went with Austin Hayes. I think that's the smart answer. The one after, and this won't be a popular one, but the Gavin Lux thing, just because of, you said earlier, I don't know what his role is.
Yeah.
And I think because we don't know what his role, but I know how good of a hitter he is, and I think that's where it's going to be the massive upgrade for the Reds. But not knowing exactly what the role is. Again, if everyone's healthy, where does he fit in with this team? That's the concern I have. Now, 162 games, you're going to find roles for him.
Right.
It's, long 9-inning games. You're going to find opportunities to be able to bring him in. I know Kirby is screaming at his laptop or his phone or his TV or however he's watching this right now. But I would, just so we don't all 3 say Austin Hayes, I would just say Gavin Lux from that standpoint of not exactly know. And again, it's 3 spring training games. It's not like we're supposed to have all the answers yet. But I would, just from that standpoint and that aspect of it, of just not necessarily knowing what his role is, I would put him up there as well. But yeah, Rogers, we know what his role is. Brady Singer, the glue guy in that rotation, I think was a huge get. Jay Francona, I think he'll be fine. So yeah, either way. All right, MLB Network, they spun the wheel, so they do this little segment where they spin the wheel, and whatever team it falls on, they give their Mount Rushmore for that team. And, they landed on the Cincinnati Reds. Here's what it looked like. Here is MLB Network's Mount Rushmore for your Cincinnati Reds. Take a look.
Cincinnati Reds. Wow. That's a good one.
That's a great one.
And Pete Rose is the founding father.
Pete Rose, Joe Morgan,
Bench.
Johnny Bench.
Only one spot left. You give it to Larkin?
Larkin.
Hall of Famer who's a lifetime Red?
Eric Davis, Johnny Vandermeer. I mean,
ooh, Johnny Vandermeer.
You know,
I'm comfortable with Rose, Bench, Morgan.
Larkin. That's a good one.
The Cincinnati Reds.
Wow. All right. So how we feel, and again, I hate Mount Rushmore segments. So I'm like, I hate MJ LeBron segments, which we do regularly. I hate.
We need to get a Jordan guy in here so we can do a real one.
I'll text Kev.
Let's go.
Kev and I got in a shouting match one time, and by shouting, me shouting, and him sitting there looking like he was going to kill me. So I'm like, all right, can't yell at you. Got it. Learned that early.
You want this?
No. That he would have used against me either way. But, yeah, Mount Rushmore segments I hate, but I was kind of fascinated by I didn't think that was that bad of a list, but a lot of people upset on social media. I think the holdup, obviously Pete Rose and Bench, and no issues with those. I think it was the last one. Is it Barry Larkin? They threw out Vandermeer. They threw out, Eric Davis. Who should have got that fourth spot? Are you fine with? And let me ask you: did you agree with the top three? I said, I'm fine with the top three.
I don't think you can really go wrong with that list. I don't think so. I know the name that a lot of people say is Frank Robinson. Frank Robinson had 10 years with the Reds, had a Rookie of the Year with the Reds, had a MVP with the Reds, was very, very good during his 10 years. So I think Frank Robinson is the name that maybe should get the final Mount Rushmore spot. I think Joey Votto has a discussion, or at least should be in the discussion. He played a long time with the Cincinnati Reds, a very, very long time. And I think that warrants at least a conversation to be had about him being in the Mount Rushmore. But if you don't want to put Votto in, I think Frank Robinson occupies the final spot.
Yeah, that would have been my four. I would have had Larkin in there. Obviously, the numbers aren't necessarily quite as good as Frank Robinson at the peak, but the longevity of what he did, his whole career in Cincinnati and being a Cincinnati kid, I think that pushes him over the edge for me. I agreed with their four.
Yeah, for me, Frank Robinson, Votto, one of those two. I'm fine with Larkin being there, but I'm like, if it wasn't Larkin, you can make an argument for the others. The thing about all of these guys, and this isn't a shot at Votto, and I know you guys are used to me taking shots at Votto. Votto just didn't win anything with the team as a whole. Like, he has his individual MVP. His MVP is why he's in the discussion to begin with. But I think when you look at Pete Rose and you look at Morgan and Bench, like, they're just associated with the Big Red Machine. You don't think of the Reds. You can't think of the Reds without thinking of those individuals. Barry Larkin, obviously a very popular player until he's in the broadcast booth. But it is what it is there. But I don't think you can go wrong with any of them being in that top.
I don't think you can take away from Joey Votto because his teams didn't win. You got 25 other players that have to compete.
I think you can and do for a list like this.
You think? I think it helps your case, but like Mike Trout, are we going to say that Mike Trout wouldn't be a Mount Rushmore of Angels players? I'm not comparing Votto to Trout. I'm just saying Mike Trout is by far and away the best player to ever play for the Angels organization.
Yeah. But I think
didn't even get close to winning anything.
He's very close to the other guys we're talking about on that list, and those other guys won more.
And the Angels' history, and you're 1,000,000% right, but I also don't think the Angels' history matches the Reds' history from in that regards of who would the competition be for Mike Trout to fight out for that. You're not wrong, though. I see what you're saying. But I think when you have so many big names for the Reds and you're considering everything, you're splitting hairs at this point. I do think winning starts to push some guys up there. But you group them all together. That's why you group Rose and Morgan and Bench together. And then obviously, whether it's Frank Robinson or Barry Larkin or Joey Votto or Vanderveer, whoever. Either way. But yes, I hate Mount Rushmore list, but I thought it was an interesting little segment they just did recently.
It's interesting that we haven't advanced in the playoffs in however many years, and we're talking about this many greats on the Reds. Like, there's such a rich history with this franchise. We just got to win again.
Got to win.
It'd be so cool.
Got to win. This is why we get excited about spring training, right? Because this is the Terry Francona show, and he's going to change things up a lot bit. So
the Austin Hayes show, baby.
That's the Austin Hayes show. I'm going to be optimistic. We're going to change hearts here in Cincinnati a little bit.
There you go. All right, little news, not news. We transition over to the NFL. We'll be right back. More Off the Bench next. All right, and we are back. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Happy Tuesday. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. We've talked plenty of Reds because we're all about spring training baseball. I don't know what we're going to do tomorrow. There's no spring training game today. Mid-July feels, baby. There you go.
Our station carries the spring training games, right?
What's that?
ESPN 1410, we carry the spring training games, right?
It gives me afternoons off from time to time.
Beautiful.
They air right in the middle of my show.
Beautiful.
So, yes. But spring. No, Reds are off today. They'll be back at it tomorrow. Little news, not news, all NFL related here as we turn our attention towards the National Football League. Obviously, what we got this week? The Combine, all that fun stuff over in Indianapolis. So
draft starts picking up.
Yeah, there's going to be plenty to discuss as we get closer and closer to that. It looks like the Bengals got really loud during the Super Bowl media row, and it's just kind of been crickets. There was the one random drop of news about sources saying that T is going to get the franchise tag, but outside of that, it's been crickets ever since. There really hasn't been anything. Do you like, by the way, is it a good thing that it's been quiet on the Bengals front? I mean, what is there to do at this point? But I mean, the only noise that can come out right now is drama. And the fact that there's no noise is good noise, correct? If you were a Bengals fan?
I agree. I think the only noise that would be coming is the podcast appearances or anything else that we've seen. Trey Hendrickson was on a show again yesterday talking about extension, kind of just rehashing the same stuff that we've already talked about with him when he's went on his various shows. But we will hear from Zach Taylor and Duke Tobin later today at the Combine. This is the only time in the year that we get to hear from Duke Tobin. He's one of the few GMs, so I guess he's not even a GM, but he's one of the few heads of front offices that never speaks to the media. And obviously, we don't hear from Mike Brown until the owners right before the season. So one of very few points we get to hear from the GM. I assume that it's going to be a lot of questions about Trey and T, about where they're going to go with the draft. So very interesting to pay attention to that today. Hopefully some more news there. Obviously the rankings cut came out. But yeah, very, very quiet on the Bengals front over the last few weeks. And I would expect that to pick back up again this week at the Combine when everyone's back together, when coaches and GMs are all in the same building. If T. Higgins is actually on the trade block, whether the Bengals are making calls or just answering the phone, I think this is when a lot of those conversations will come, and we'll see what exactly his value is league-wide, and that'll play into whether or not and what the Bengals would be willing to pay him and the length and everything there. So I think this Combine week, whether we hear about conversations or not, I think they're happening, and I think it's a big, big week for the Bengals.
I don't know if silence is golden here. I think that you'd want to hear something. I'd want to hear progress is being made. I think the longer we go with silence is the longer I have doubts that the Bengals are going to get something done. And I think every question that you ask the Duke Tobin's fair, because I think both of those positions, if you lose either of those two guys, T. Higgins or Trey Hendrickson, changes this draft completely. I mean, and it's an utterly 180 turn for this draft, right? Yeah. You need to get a wide receiver. You need to get a pass-catching option if T. Higgins is not here. If Trey Hendrickson's not here, you have to get an edge rusher immediately, and you still might have to get one with him here. So this is everything, and we need to have some sort of answer. I know it's going to be difficult to do, but I mean, my God, we're still sitting here, and I think with the lack of reports and the lack of everything, I'm starting to get more nervous.
Casey, what about you? No noise is good noise, or is silence making you? They always tell you in like negotiations just to not talk, just to be quiet.
Well, you can't talk first.
You can't talk first.
Right.
You want that silence to make the room uncomfortable a little bit. So are you like Elliot, where that noise is making you uncomfortable, or no news is good news in regards to there not being any drama right now? It's just we know what's at stake at this offseason, and we just kind of are waiting for the dominoes to fall.
I think that the news has been very slow. I mean, like we expected the Jermaine Pratt and the Sheldon Rankins, and we're still expecting a few other names, and they've yet to had that come out. Man, that part is concerning about how much left there is to do in our minds as fans that they haven't done yet. But we're not there at the panic button yet. I mean, we've gotten till March, till the trade, the tag deadline. So I'm not going to worry until a tag is not signed or a tag has not been placed on T. That's when I will start to panic, is after March.
March 4th is the deadline. So, again, that's coming up. That's early
That's
next
next
week.
week.
So
Damn.
we will hear a lot of news about the Bengals coming up in the next week or two. It's going to pick up pretty quickly. Yeah, it's going to pick up pretty quickly with the tag deadline. And we'll know what we're doing with T. Higgins at that point.
Yeah.
So, if he's on the tag, obviously, they could still work out an extension and draw this out for a while or move him. But hopefully some concrete news by March 4th.
All right, so let's dive into a little news, not news, around the rest of the NFL. We do have we'll dive into more. The Bengals made an addition to their defensive staff yesterday. Curious your thoughts on that. We'll get to that coming up here shortly. But news or not news, I'll throw it out to you guys, and you decide if it's newsworthy or if we just move on from it. But news or not news, the NFL will consider changes to the kickoff rule, including touchbacks moving to the 35-yard line. Rich McKay on the report of this, that look, it came out at the end of the NFL season that technically what they were trying to accomplish with the new kickoff rule, it was very, very effective. Even though it wasn't aesthetically pleasing to the fans, it was effective in what they were trying to do in mitigating injury and everything else that comes with that. However, it still looks like there's a chance that they could be tinkering with it a little bit. News or not news that the NFL will consider changes to the kickoff rule, including touchbacks moving to the 35-yard line.
I think it's news because they proved last year they're not scared to change anything. So they might change it. I never thought they'd change the kickoff to what we saw last year. I think it looks terrible even though they've said it does work. So, yeah, I think it's news. I think any change in football and professional sports at this point is news because I wouldn't put it past any commissioner to make the change. So, yeah, I think that'd be interesting. And wouldn't that work against them? Wouldn't moving the touchbacks out further decrease returns? So I don't necessarily understand the point of that, but yeah, I think it's news because I think every change in professional sports is news at this point.
I think it's news because you're starting to change like the when baseball went to the the extra inning rule, right? When there's a runner on second, a lot of people said, and they still have that belief that it's like taking away from what baseball is. I think if you do stuff like this and you start changing this kickoff rule, you're taking away from football from what it was. I don't think that's what football is when you get a touchback at the 40-yard line. It's just not what it is. So the more they tinker with this stuff, the more I get annoyed with it. And they're going to continue to do it, like Jacob said. I just think at this point it's almost silly. It becomes a spoof of the NFL when you're dealing with multiple massive changes. The kickoff, I mean, if it accomplished what it accomplished, great, good for them. It looks terrible. The fans hate it. It's not football, and I'm almost tired of it already after 1 year. So I don't think it's something that anybody wants to see. If they want to keep doing it, go ahead. But I do think eventually that'll come back to where it is normal football. You kick the ball off. If you want to return it, great. If it goes through the back of the end zone, great. That's just what it is.
We've seen the league obviously come out and say that it did everything they wanted it to accomplish. We've seen all the fans say how much they hate it. Have players come out and said one way or the other? I haven't seen anything from the Players Association or anything along those lines. Has it affected injuries or anything like that? That would be the only reason I think that they would continue to make changes if the players don't necessarily think it accomplished what they wanted it to accomplish on their end in the case of injuries and everything like that, and decreasing returns, which is what they were trying to increase with the original change, would be a way to help that. So there's probably a lot more going into this, but I'm against any of the changes. Go back to the original kickoff. It wasn't a problem.
I just think with as good as kickers are these days, you start the ball at the 35, and you're too realistic? Like, you usually don't get exactly 10 on a first down, so you're probably like 10 or 2 first downs away from points. Yeah, that seems silly to me.
Yeah, and so we know concussions as a whole have dropped, but
right.
that wasn't technically based off all the kickoff rules. That was just all the rules combined for the changes throughout football. But either way, aesthetically, it was horrible, but nonetheless. Moving on, and you brought this up during headlines. The Packers were the team that was pushing to ban the tush push. I have no clue why we're still talking about teams wanting to get rid of the tush push. Like, to me, I have no. Do you have a problem with the play? I have no problem with the play. It doesn't bother me whatsoever. I mean, it's an advantage that was built through a team that has the strengths to do it. Other teams can't replicate it. I feel like if more teams could replicate it, I don't think many people would have as much of a problem with it. But because the Eagles have mastered something that doesn't look that difficult, but apparently it is, to stop and execute apparently for other teams throughout football, I'm amazed that it's still such a major talking point. The Packers, the one team that we're trying to push to get that vetoed in the NFL.
Yeah, no, I think that I think it's news. I think it's news that you're trying to ban it. I don't think it's aesthetically pleasing for the fans to look at it. But not, like you just said, not every team can do it, and certainly not every team can stop it. I think it's a football play. I think when I think of football, I think of something like that. It's basically a hyper quarterback sneak, and that's the quarterback sneak's already allowed. So why wouldn't this be allowed? I have no issue with it whatsoever. If you have an issue with the tush push, try to stop it. And you can try to do it with the Reds, or the Commanders did in the playoffs. Jump the line 5 times. See if the ref awards the other team points. Because I think that's really one of the only ways to stop it if you don't have the protection or at least have the power on that defensive line. I love the play. I love the play. Clearly not enough teams do it. The Bills tried to do it twice, failed both times.
And they have a big quarterback, too. Like, I thought that would be the team that could do it just because of the size of the quarterback, and they couldn't execute it.
It failed. So, yeah, I have no issue with it.
I do think the play should be banned. I think it should have been banned years ago. I don't like the reasons the Packers gave. I don't think that's good reasons for it. They said it's not a skillful play. They said anyone can do it. Then why doesn't everyone do it?
Yeah.
I think it is. It takes a certain design. It takes certain players. It's difficult to execute the way the Eagles execute. I'm not trying to take it away for that reason or because no one can stop it. I'm not trying to take it away from that reason. Point blank, I think it's an illegal formation. The guards move up 2 steps. Their helmets are parallel with the ball in most cases. The defensive line scoots forward. You're decreasing the space in between their heads, more violent contact with their heads. We saw it in the Super Bowl when they pulled the bodies off Chris Jones, and he was trying to pop his shoulder back in on the sidelines because of the injury he had in that compressed space. Jason Kelsey talks about it all the time, about how they peel off the bodies. You just hope you're not hurt at the bottom of the pile. I just don't think it's a good play for a league that prides itself on player safety. I think you're begging for injuries for everyone involved, both sides of the ball, and I just think that you've had rules that prohibited this play for the vast majority of the history of the NFL. Until a couple of years ago, you were not allowed to push the ball carrier. You weren't allowed to pull the ball carrier. A QB sneak that Tom Brady did, that Bart Starr did. All the old QB sneaks was the QB taking the ball under center and sneaking himself. Now you have the bodies behind him pushing. I think a very easy way to outlaw it and still give the Eagles an advantage with their offensive line and with Jalen Hurts is you just can't push the player. If Jalen Hurts can sneak through and use his lower body power to get the first down, absolutely. I'm all for that. I don't think there's any problem there. I have an issue with the pushing and with the offensive line alignment.
All right, next up on News or Not News, Falcons general manager told the media just today that the plan right now is to pay quarterback Kirk Cousins his upcoming bonus and move forward with him on the team. News or not news?
I think this is not news because that does not change my opinion on what they're going to do with Kirk Cousins at all. I think if they say we're not going to have Kirk Cousins be the backup, then his trade value goes through the floor, if there is any on that contract anyway. So, of course, he has to say they're okay with Kirk Cousins being the backup or you can't move him. So, I think that's a nothing burger. They're not going to have a $27 million backup. I just don't believe it for a second.
I also agree, not news. And not only that, I have a hard time believing Kirk Cousins is going to want to do that as well. Not that it would be all his choice. I'm just saying you're asking for bad vibes in the locker room, and I don't think any team wants that. You don't want that, especially with a rookie quarterback taking over. You don't want a quarterback drama behind him. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever to keep him. So I agree. Not news at all.
You had to draft Michael Penix because you believe in him.
Correct.
We can debate whether or not it was the right pick or not after you sign Kirk Cousins. That's fine. But the only reason you draft Michael Penix is because you think he's an NFL quarterback. So if you think he's an NFL quarterback, go sign a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
Don't sign Kirk Cousins. That tells me you don't believe in him playing a full season as your starter and getting you to the playoffs and getting you where you want to be. So I think in terms of, we talked about confidence in the spring training, I think there's a lot of confidence in the offseason for young players in the NFL. If the Falcons aren't willing to move on from Kirk Cousins, that doesn't show me a lot of confidence in Michael Penix. So I think it's a big move in that sense as well, telling this kid, this older kid that's been through a lot of injuries, seen a lot of different things in college, that you believe in him to be your quarterback of the future. I think that's a big thing that the Falcons can say this offseason, and keeping Kirk Cousins says the exact opposite.
Yeah, it seems to be the common rebuttal to that is, well, what else is the GM going to say?
Yeah.
Because if you say you're for sure, you have no plans for him next season, every team is going to sit back and say, well, we're just going to wait for you to cut him, and then we'll go after him. But, oh, man, you want to keep him? Well, hold on. Do you really want to keep him? Because we got this shiny toy that you might want, this draft pick you might want. So, yeah, I don't think there's news there. Again, these are some of – you talked about the Bengals getting a lot of answers to their questions coming up. This is going to be one of those too,
For sure.
With the combine and everything else coming up here around the corner. All right, let's step away for a few moments. We'll pick up a couple more. We have one on Shadeur Sanders. Matthew Stafford has had quite a few teams line up to show interest. One that involves your Cincinnati Bengals in a future Hall of Fame defensive player potentially coming out of retirement to play for your
Yeah.
team. I don't understand what's happening, but we'll get to all of that when we come back. More Off the Bench when we return. All right, and we are back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Back to news or not news. Let's go to Matthew Stafford. At least 4 teams have shown interest in trading for Matthew Stafford, according to Albert Breer. The Rams, and some reports that let it be known that the Rams are up to moving on from their veteran Super Bowl winning quarterback Matthew Stafford. 4 teams have shown interest, according to Albert Breer. Those 4 teams include the Cleveland Browns, the New York Giants, the Raiders, and the Steelers. News or not news?
I think it's news because it doesn't make any sense to me. So I think the Rams are a perfect situation for Matthew Stafford, and I think Matthew Stafford's a perfect quarterback for the Rams, and they're already married. So I don't know why either side would want to move on here. I think it's news because any move that's this confusing at this point in the NFL season has to be news. So
Yeah.
I can't understand why either one would want to move on. Obviously, those teams listed are quarterback needy, but if Matthew Stafford wants to win at the aging part of his career, which of those teams gives him a better chance than the Los Angeles Rams? So this is a head scratcher for me, but certainly news.
You said the 4 teams were who? It was the Cleveland Browns, the Raiders, who?
Giants.
Giants
and Steelers.
Yeah, like I mean, maybe the Steelers. I guess if you wanted to argue for winning,
Would you take Pickens over Puka?
Of course I would not.
Right,
so that
so-
means I don't understand it. The only thing I can think of, I mean, something happened last year with the Rams. Cooper Kupp stopped being involved in that offense. Matthew Stafford stopped throwing him the football. Maybe there's more behind the scenes that we don't know about. And if that's the case, if he's genuinely unhappy there, that would be the reason you move him. I think it's absolutely news because he's still a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's still arguably a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And if he were to move on to the Steelers specifically, I'd feel very, very nervous. You talk about, Aaron Rodgers going to the Steelers. If Matthew Stafford goes to the Steelers, it's a little bit of a different story. I start to get more worried about that. The other 3 teams, I mean, he would be almost silly to go there. Maybe the Giants. I think Jacob and I were talking about it yesterday. Maybe the Giants, it makes sense because Neighbors is a dude and he's incredible. But it makes absolutely zero sense whatsoever to move on from maybe the second best coach in the NFL.
Yeah, the quarterback I would love to fill those shoes if Stafford does move. I would love to see Sam Darnold go to L.A. I think we'd see a very similar thing with McVay as what we saw with KOC. I don't think he works many places, but I think he would work in L.A.
Did you? If you said this, my bad, I missed it. Does he have the no trade clause?
No, but they're allowing his agent to seek out destinations and test his value. So they're basically operating
Kinda
as if
working
he
with
can
him.
control.
Okay.
Right. I think this is more Matthew Stafford wants a $50 million extension. The Rams are saying, go test your value. No one's giving you that. And then he's going to come right
He's going to remain a Ram. They're going to basically say, see, we told you.
Exactly.
You're not
and then
worth
they'll
that
give him a
much.
slight raise or whatever. And, I think that's how it's going to play out. I'd be pretty shocked if Matthew Stafford's not in L.A. next year because, again, it just makes no sense for McVay or the Rams.
The team that caught my attention that's looking at Stafford, for one, I agree. It's news that the Rams could potentially be moving on from him. I don't think Cooper Kupp, like people are putting them together saying that, man, they want to get rid of both. Cooper Kupp makes sense. You get out. I think now's the time you get out. Even if he has another good season left in him, you get out now before you marry a wide receiver long term with the mileage that he has. The Stafford thing caught. I think those are 2 isolated situations. I think they're fighting to keep Matthew Stafford. I don't think they're fighting to keep Cooper Kupp, especially because you have Puka Nacua when it's all said and done. I think the news is the teams that are interested in him, not so much the Raiders. The Browns, I think, are kicking the tires on it because that's a way to show Myles Garrett, like, we're bringing in Matthew Stafford. Obviously, when you look at the receivers and the weapons they have on defense, that they're a lot close. If you get Matthew Stafford, you're a lot closer than where you were a year ago at this time. So it's news from that. The Raiders, you brought Chip Kelly in to be your offensive coordinator for a reason. I still don't understand what the plan was. I mean, maybe it's the fact that he got paid $6+ million to come be the OC. But that would make sense to go get a Matthew Stafford there. The Steelers, though, worry me the most of all the teams that are lining up to potentially get him, because Pittsburgh, I think he makes Pittsburgh an instant Super Bowl contender at that point, assuming that they, what if they go get Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford? But I agree with you. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think this is go test the waters, let the league tell you what you're worth. And then, I don't know, what if the league does tell him he's worth it? There's some desperate teams. The Raiders are desperate. Look at that division with Bo Nix, Patrick Mahomes, and Justin Herbert. I could see the Raiders being desperate. They have the money to spend. Cleveland's desperate. I don't think they have the money to spend, though. Pittsburgh's semi-desperate. You're in a conference with Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson.
At some point, Pittsburgh has to do something.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it forever. They can't go from Kenny Pickett to Russell Wilson to Justin Fields to Aaron Rodgers. Like, they have to take a swing, or they have to suck, so that they can pick high enough in the draft and get a decent quarterback. This middling, 9 wins, 10 wins, it's not enough. They're not good enough to win a Super Bowl. They haven't been close, and they're not good enough, or bad enough, I should say, to pick high enough to get a quarterback that's worth a damn. So, the Steelers are in such a terrible spot. Matthew Stafford would help. I still think with his age and, obviously on the downturn of his career, at least a little bit, he's still a very serviceable quarterback, one of the best in the NFL, but you can't argue that he's not old and aging and getting worse. So, I think if I'm the Steelers, what do I have on my team that has me in this rush? I don't think they get Matthew Stafford and boom, they're up there with, all the Super Bowl contenders. I think they're in a clear second or third tier of that. Yeah. I think they could win a Super Bowl, certainly better than they are now. I don't think they're a top tier contender with just the addition of Matthew Stafford. So I don't know why they would make that move. I think if I'm the Steelers and I want to have a long-term solution at the quarterback position, the result is being bad for a year or two.
Well, the rumor on the streets is that they're in on a receiver. So
who knew?
Look out.
I also don't think Stafford. Like, how many years does this guy have left? Of good football? I mean, out of all the quarterbacks that are active in the NFL, he has to be the most banged up quarterback, right?
Up there.
He took brutal shot after shot in Detroit, and he's still standing. He won a Super Bowl. He's still a good quarterback. But he can't have that much left in the tank. So I don't know what it is for him that he's seeking here. Is he seeking to cement his legacy? It was cemented when you won the Super Bowl, guy. You don't have to keep doing it. Is it about winning the lottery? You want another $50 million contract? You go elsewhere? I mean, it's just you've made your money. I don't understand any of it. At all. And by the way, Cooper Kupp, I know people say Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp, outside of having the best season maybe by a wide receiver ever, and he did have that, so shout out to him. He hasn't been the world's best wide receiver.
He's the hardest wide receiver to talk about in NFL history because of that one season.
Yeah, I know. It's just, I mean, he's had maybe the best season ever, and then outside of that, he's gone over 1,000 once. And really hasn't been healthy ever.
At all.
So I don't know how you grade Cooper Kupp and why you'd want him to be on your team for a lot of money. I think he could be serviceable, but, I mean, he's a rich man's Hunter Renfrow.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp was in the 2017 draft class. He has the same number of 1,000-yard seasons as Kenny Galladay. So, I mean, he had the wonderful season. I can't take that away from him. But he just isn't a consistent enough wide receiver one that I would be willing to give up if I'm any team, not even just talking about the Bengals, to give up what it sounds like they're asking for him. I don't even think he's a bona fide wide receiver one outside of McVay's offense. I think he's confined to the slot. I don't know that he can play outside in any given system. I think Cooper Kupp's a very intriguing player in terms of value and what he can provide to a team because I'm not entirely convinced it's a lot.
That's why I think he's good in Washington.
Yeah.
As long as you have Terry McLaurin, I think he'd be good. I mean, you guys joked, and I saying joked because I don't think anyone thoroughly thought the Bengals were going to go get Cooper Kupp. But if you have Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp makes sense.
Absolutely.
If you are the Chargers, what about the Chargers? Does Cooper Kupp make sense next to
I wouldn't like him on the Chargers because I love what I saw from Ladd in that position this year. If you sign Cooper Kupp, you have to play Ladd on the outside, and we haven't seen that yet. You have a 1,000-yard receiver coming out of your slot as a rookie. I'm not putting him on the bench for Cooper Kupp, who's aging, and as we said, just had 2 of the seasons that Ladd just put up last year. I think that's another thing that makes it very, very hard to talk about signing Cooper Kupp. If you have an exciting slot receiver, you're out on him because he's just not versatile anymore.
you brought up Stafford. Like, what else could he be playing for at this point? I think he's like, hey, I just want to play football.
Yeah.
I don't really want to be seeking a trade. I don't really want to leave LA and play somewhere else. Like, they're putting him in that position, or maybe not. But again, it could all be the negotiation side. But those 4 teams definitely. And the Giants, no surprise. That one's not a surprise. I think the Giants. You put Stafford with Neighbors, I kind of like the Giants over there.
I am
kind of like
way
him.
higher on the Giants core than anyone else I've ever talked to. So I'd be very excited about Stafford.
So
and the
he would
Giants.
be good over there, nonetheless. All right, moving on. News or not news? The Titans general manager told reporters that he has received calls about the availability of the number 1 overall pick. The Titans will listen, but it's too early in the process for any decisions to be made. News or not news?
I think it's news because this is the first time we've heard them openly say that they're open to trading the pick. Originally, their GM said that they're going to take a generational talent at number 1, and we broke that down, and we're trying to figure out who the generational talents in this draft were for them to take at 1. But this is the first time they've said they've been open to trading pick number 1, and even though this is a lighter draft class, especially quarterback-wise, we know what the haul for the first overall pick can be and has been in the past. So this is huge news, and the fact that they've received calls already means there's teams interested. I would assume it's one of the quarterback teams, whether it's the Giants at 3 or the Raiders further down in the draft trying to come up and get a Shadeur Sanders or a Cam Ward. But a couple other nuggets that came out of that interview with the Titans GM, he said he believes Shadeur Sanders has a, quote, sufficient enough arm to play in the NFL. Doesn't exactly sound like a ringing endorsement for the first overall pick. He said the initial draft board for them has been set. The plan is to bring in another quarterback at some point this offseason that will compete with Will Levis for the starting job. And the other thing that leads me to believe that they might not trade the pick, or maybe they're just saying this to try to drive up the trade value, he firmly believes Travis Hunter can make a significant impact on both sides of the football in the NFL. So if you are going to keep the first overall pick, I think the conversation we had a few weeks ago about whether or not they're going to go away from the quarterback position is getting a little bit louder with either Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. But I think the fact that they're open to trading it certainly makes it interesting.
I'm going to say it's not news, just because I think there's a difference between opening the door on a trade and not closing a door on the trade. I think that's what this is. They're not closing. They're not ruling out an incredible trade. I don't think that drafting number 1 with what the Titans need necessarily works best for them this year. I think it's probably going to be them trading back. So I don't think it's really news to me, at least. I didn't hear anything there that was shocking. I don't think a tight end in this class helps them. And I don't think Travis Hunter really helps them either, given the fact that they don't have a quarterback. So if I were the Titans, I'd trade that pick and I'd try to replenish everything else.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's not news because it didn't really say anything. It said that they're interested, that they're open to taking calls, but they haven't made a decision. Well, then let me know when you have, because it's you. And by the way, it would be more news if they said we are not taking calls on the first round pick. I think that would be news. Saying that you're taking calls on the pick is not news. This is a draft that has very good talent, but I don't think it has elite talent in regards to – I don't think it has enough elite talent to justify going number 1 overall. And that includes Abdul Carter and others, as much as I like Abdul Carter and them. Like, this draft, it stinks to be the teams picking in the top 3 or 4 right now. Like, I think if you're sitting in that 4, 5, or 6, 7 spot, you're in heaven, because a lot of your decisions will be made for you. Unless you truly value something that's higher up that you would, trade up to get. I really don't think there's a lot of those teams in that position that are desperate for anything that's up there. The Raiders, I think, would love if Cam Ward or Shadeur fell into their lap, but I don't think they're going to be aggressive and move up to grab any of them. I don't think
the Giants
anybody
might.
is. The Giants might?
Just because of the leash on those 2 guys there. Joe Shane after the last offseason, Brian Dable. Obviously, we talked about a hot seat a lot last year. The only way they extend their jobs is a new quarterback. And unless you're going to default to Sam Darnold, I think you have to get one. And if that requires moving up from 3 to 1 because Drew Lock decided to have a top 5 game of all time and get you out of that spot, then they might have to trade a couple mid-round picks. I don't think this is going to be some crazy haul if the team moving up is in the top 5 or so. I just don't see it being a Panthers-esque haul or anything along those lines. I think it's going to be 2 1s and a mid-round pick or something like that. I just have a hard time believing a team's going to mortgage their future on Shadeur Sanders or Cam Ward. Not to say the Titans wouldn't still move out for a lesser trade package. They were going to end up picking 1 because I don't think anyone's going to give them what they want.
Yeah, I saw DraftKings put out a tweet that said, imagine the Titans pulling the trigger on just taking Abdul Carter number 1 and going to get a Sam Darnold or something or whatever. And nonetheless,
if the Titans want Abdul Carter at 1, couldn't they not take a whole lot of assets from the Giants and hypothetically get him at 3? Because if we think the Giants are going to go quarterback, we think the Browns are going to go quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, there will be movement, I think, on this
I agree.
draft, but not a ton. But I think
there's going to be more movement in the teens and 20s than there are going to be in the top 10, because when players that individual teams are in love with start to fall, they'll go get them. I mean, guys like Tyler Warren, Mike Green, these are unique players in this draft class. If specific teams fall in love with them during the draft process, we could see guys move up for moderate surprises at different spots.
Next up, last one here, news, not news. I think you guys talked about it yesterday to close out when I popped off, but star quarterback, and I didn't write this one, it was a tweet. According to Ian Rappaport, I do not think he's going to be a star quarterback, but this is besides the point. Star quarterback Shadeur Sanders will not participate in any drills at the NFL Combine, only interviews. Per Ian Rappaport, he will throw at Colorado's Pro Day. News or not news?
I think it's news because it tells you what Shadeur Sanders thinks of himself. He thinks his film is incredible. He thinks he's no doubt first-round quarterback. He thinks he's who'd be a top quarterback in any draft class. That's what not throwing at the combine says. That says everything else I have speaks for me. I don't have to throw next to my peers. I don't think he's watched enough of his own film if he thinks it's good enough for him to go at the top of the draft, because it stinks, and he's a 5th or 6th round pick with a different father. So I think he should have thrown at the combine next to his peers. He should have thrown at the East-West Shrine Bowl next to his peers. That's how you show yourself or show other people that you're an NFL quarterback. He refuses to compete, and that's a huge negative for me on this, especially with a guy who we've had questions about, his competitive nature and everything else, about his attitude. Hopefully he kills the interviews, and this is nothing, but I just don't see that happening. I think out of everyone in this draft, he's the one that could have gained most from throwing, and the fact that he's had 2 opportunities now to throw next to his peers, he's going against it. I think that's a terrible, terrible look for Shadeur.
I think it's not news to me personally, but it should be news to anybody who wants Shadeur to be their quarterback of the future. Like, I understand, and I said this yesterday, I understand a quarterback not wanting to risk. As of right now, people keep saying that he's a first-round talent. He's going to get drafted with those first 10 picks. So if that's the case, if you already know your fate, why would you ever risk that? Why would you ever throw, be seen as a mediocre quarterback and lose what is already cemented? Based on what I've heard and based on what everybody else has heard on every report ever, that he will be drafted in the top 15 picks. He will be drafted probably in the top 10 picks, probably in the top 5 picks. So if I'm Shadeur Sanders, I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah, all right, I'm a top 5 pick, great. That's all I need to do. You want me? Come get me. If I were a GM, if I were the Cleveland Browns per se, and I'm gonna risk my future on one of these quarterbacks, and I say this guy doesn't want to throw, he doesn't even want to just show us what he has even a little bit, then yeah, I'm out. I wouldn't touch him with a 50-foot pole, because if he's unwilling to bet on himself, he's certainly not going to be a good fit in Cleveland, who would need a quarterback of the future. You wouldn't. Why would Las Vegas want a guy to reset their franchise? He doesn't even believe in himself.
So there's 2 ways to look at this, and they don't benefit him either way, because the narrative will be spun in 2 different directions. Neither of them are good for him by not throwing at the combine. And I'll say that all while saying, and this isn't a Shadeur take, I have no problem with any athlete who doesn't want to perform at the combine, because those teams that are there, they're not looking for reasons to draft you. They're looking for reasons not to draft you. So I don't mind when players do this to this. But this is what's going to work against Shadeur. It's going to fall into 2 camps here. Him not throwing at the combine is either going to be spun into his arrogance and his cockiness and just his I'm better than you personality that will rub a lot of teams the wrong way, or it'll fall into the category of, well, what's he hiding? Because he knows, and my point earlier, the combine, they're not looking for reasons to draft you. They are literally combing through what they are trying to find every reason in the world not to draft you. And to me, it's either he's beyond arrogant, beyond cocky, to the point to where it's a negative, or he knows they're going to nitpick a ton of stuff and he can risk dropping. I think so. He does say he's willing to throw it at Colorado's Pro Day.
With the 6 receivers you've played with
yes.
for 2 years?
So and that's the thing. He wants to control the environment, and by controlling the environment, you're going to throw at Colorado where you're comfortable. You're going to be surrounded by people that you are comfortable with, and you're going to almost control the narrative or control the feel and the tempo and the vibe a little bit more. So, like I said, I don't know if he's all the way wrong, all the way right. I see a little bit of both sides, but I do know from a perception standpoint, he's either super cocky and arrogant, or he's hiding something, or maybe it's a little bit of everything. But yeah, I think that him being willing to throw at the Pro Day, that's great. But teams will also say, well, yeah, you're throwing to guys that you're comfortable with. I want to see you out of your comfort zone. You're going to go to Cleveland, or you're going to go to New York, or you're going to go wherever, the Raiders. You're going to be throwing to guys you've never played with before. So you need to prove that you can go and play with guys that you're not comfortable playing with and become comfortable playing with them. I find him to be interesting. Just so much noise for Shadeur. Cam Ward, very quiet. Just what do you need me to do? Anything you need me to do, I'll do. I think Cam Ward ultimately is going to win over more people than Shadeur, unless people continue to fall for the shininess of Shadeur because of who his dad is, the name, the brand, and everything else.
A lot of people in the chat saying Caleb didn't throw last year. There was no gripes about that. Bryce Young didn't throw the year he was coming in. There was no gripes about that. Jackson Smith and Jigba didn't run at the combine when he was there. Abdul Carter's not testing. Why aren't we talking about that? All the players I just listed were great college players with elite film.
Yep.
Shadeur Sanders is not that. He does not fall into that category. He has less than stellar film. He's not a first-round pick if you just watch the film without the nameplate on the back. That's not a hot take. It's Shadeur Sanders. That's just who he is. So the fact that he's acting like one of those no-doubt first-rounders, he's some kind of stud coming out of college, it just really rubs me the wrong way.
You guys ever watch Survivor?
I have not.
No Survivor fans. Casey, you're not a Survivor guy? Well, in Survivor, once you get down to the final four, right, there's a final immunity challenge. You win the immunity challenge, you cement yourself in the final three. The top three get votes to see who wins Survivor. Now, I've seen Survivor where when you win that final immunity challenge, if your resume isn't good enough, you will then take off your immunity necklace, give it to somebody else, and go to a fire-making challenge to see who gets eliminated, right? And you can pick out either your biggest threat or you can just boost your resume. This seems to me like one of those situations where he's already in the final three. Why would he take off the immunity necklace? I'm not faulting him for not doing that. I'm just saying if I were a GM and I don't like the tape, why would I risk my entire franchise on it?
I like that.
The Cleveland Browns are risking everything on it. They just had one of the biggest collapses or biggest downfalls than I've ever seen in sports with the signing of Deshaun Watson, and they're going to now try to go to a guy who isn't trying to lure them to him. I wouldn't want to restart my franchise with Shadeur at this very second. That's just my opinion on it, and I'm not blaming him for it. If I were a top 5 recruited player in college football and I already have my name cemented in stone as the number 2 quarterback or maybe number 1 quarterback in the NFL draft, why am I going out there and proving myself to anybody else? You want me? Come and get me. You're desperate. I'm not.
It's kind of like the cash out option. That's a great, by the way, great analogy with that. Because I think everything that they said in the chat, I agree with them, by the way. I agree. It wasn't a big deal when those guys did it. I do see your point. Shadeur Sanders is not at the level his name is as big as theirs, but his talent's not as big as theirs. So I agree with you. That's why it's a little bit different there. But I don't blame any athlete who looks at the machine that is the NFL and says, I'm not going to dance because you tell me to dance. I'm not a puppet. I'm not going to do what you tell me to right now. I'm going to control the narrative. I'm going to have you come out to my pro day. I'm going to throw for you there. I have no problem with an athlete taking control of it that way. That's why I said, though, there's a lot of moving parts to this. He's right. The NFL's right for not being happy with it. The fans that have a problem with it aren't wrong for having a problem with it. And the fans that defend him aren't wrong either. I think this is one of those very weird scenarios where he's not wrong and the NFL's not wrong, and it'll just be interesting to see if it has any impact. Because you're right, he's a top 2 quarterback in the draft. That's not changing. Unless at the Combine he has a bad showing at the Combine, and now all of a sudden your guy, Jackson Dart, comes darting up.
I think he's going to have a wonderful Combine. He's going
to
have
to
a killer Combine. No. He's going to have a killer Combine. He's going to go high. He's going to suck. I mean, that's yeah, but he's going to kill it in shorts.
The Underwear Olympics.
Yeah, that's right.
Undefeated. There you go. All right, Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410. Wingham and Dayton. The Cincinnati Bengals make a new addition to their defensive staff along with Al Golden. That was announced yesterday. Curious your guys' thoughts on that. What does that mean for the Bengals defense? We'll get to all of that and more when we come back. More Off the Bench next. I don't know why I said that it was quiet on the Bengals front. They made a huge addition to their defensive coaching staff yesterday, or did they? Tell us about the Bengals' new addition that was announced yesterday. Good, bad, in the middle? How we feeling?
So Bengals added Sean Desai as a defensive quality control analyst. There's some rumors that he's going to be the passing game coordinator and work with the offense, which is the role that he played in Los Angeles with the Rams last year. Rams defense, obviously one of the more exciting young defenses in the entirety of the NFL. I think that's a really good piece to add here. You obviously need someone to work with the offense. And the thing that really jumped off the page for me first, I recognized the name because he was the Eagles defensive coordinator last year during their skid, when they fell apart. And he lost the locker room, was fired for Matt Patricia in the middle of the season. But Sean Desai is a guy who was a multiple-time DC in the NFL, a defensive coordinator with the Bears, the Eagles, and then a senior defensive analyst, like I said, last year with the Rams. I think adding veterans in the NFL space that have been defensive coordinators in the NFL before is absolutely crucial around Al Golden. I believe in Al Golden's X's and O's to the utmost degree. I think he's going to be a phenomenal defensive coach in Cincinnati for a long, long time. However, there are ins and outs of the NFL that are different to navigate than college football. And I think, throughout the early parts of the season, as he's getting his feet wet as one of the big three in an NFL franchise that's trying to win a Super Bowl, having guys that have been defensive coordinators on NFL teams with those same goals, that's important to have and help ease him along. And I know the name Sean Desai doesn't exactly jump off the page as something that's super exciting to add because of the most recent story in Philadelphia, but he's worked under Al Golden at Temple as the outside linebackers coach and as the assistant director of football operations at Miami when Al Golden was the defensive coordinator at both of those schools. So this continues to lead me to believe that the Bengals are, which was my main concern when we hired Al Golden, giving him the control of the staff and the personnel that he needs to get his guys and his staff and his players in here to do the right things. And I think it's going to be a great hire for the Bengals. He's not calling plays. He's not the defensive coordinator, so don't freak out about that Philadelphia Eagles story. He's going to be a guy that helps our very young, new defensive coordinator, Al Golden, along, and a guy that he's very comfortable with and has worked with in the past. I think it's a great hire and just gives me more and more confidence in Al Golden. Tells me that the Bengals franchise has a lot of confidence in Al Golden, which is a great, great place to be.
I love hiring people that have familiarity with the person that they're going to be working very closely with, and he has that with Al Golden. I think the Bengals defense is going in a different direction, which again, all good things. They've done the same thing over and over again for the past several years. Hasn't worked out in the way that the Bengals have wanted. We're changing things up a little bit, and I think this is a good hire. This is a good start, at least right now in Al Golden's tenure as our DC, to make some necessary changes, and we'll see how the Bengals look next season with a completely, hopefully, revamped defense, and that hopefully that includes Trey Hendrickson as well. But the method to the madness is just beginning now because we've had Lou Anarumo. I thank him for his service, but it's time to move on from that way of thinking.
Casey, how are we feeling about the new? And I agree with you guys too, from the standpoint of bringing experienced guys from winning cultures and trying to reestablish that back on the defensive side of the ball. A defense that just a few years ago, yes, was in the Super Bowl, but obviously trying to reframe that too to match the intensity on the offensive side. I'm sure you like that addition, Casey.
Yeah, I'll spin it a little bit here so we can kind of cover it all. I mean, there was a reason that he was fired as a defensive coordinator for the Eagles. I mean, he kind of fumbled the bag a bit. He's been a defensive coordinator twice. I guess he's just not cut out to be a coordinator. But as far as we've seen as an assistant coach, as a quality assurance coach, he's been pretty good in that role with the teams that he's been with. So, I mean, I don't mind the addition. I'm hoping that whatever the role that I guess he ends up doing for the Bengals as the defensive assistant, that he brings some sort of knowledge to us that we didn't priorly have. I mean, I think some of the things that people are kind of like linking that to is like a lot of the free agents that are big names on the defensive line are Eagles players. Like, I can't remember, Sweat and Milton Williams. Mm-hmm. So that could be a sign that maybe that they can get a better understanding of if they want to go target those players or not. So those are all interesting tidbits about Sean. I just, off the top of my head right now, like my reaction to it is hopefully he brings some sort of like defensive line philosophy to the Bengals or something that can help them develop that area, because they need a guy that can really help bring out the best in the guys that we already have. I don't know if they have that on the roster currently in terms of the staff. So hopefully this guy can do that, bring that, and also bring in a little information about some of the top free agents. So
there was another staffer that was kind of quietly added to the Bengals staff over the last couple of weeks. Michael Moon, the D-line quality control coach for Al Golden at Notre Dame, has taken that same role here in Cincinnati, at least according to his updated LinkedIn. Not reported yet by the Bengals, but he updated his LinkedIn to say that he is the defensive line assistant for the Bengals now. So taking that with him from Notre Dame is Al Golden, and like I said with Sean Desai, I think continuity of the staff when you're a new guy trying to get a new system, I think that's absolutely crucial. So I love really most of, if not all of, what the Bengals have done so far this offseason. Hopefully we can get some contracts done and some cuts rolling here soon, and then we can give it an A+.
Love cheering for people to lose their jobs, baby. Get rid of them.
I think it's a little different when you've already made tens of millions of dollars prior in your career.
Fair enough. Bearcats in action tonight. They got Baylor in town. 2.5
That's
point
right.
favorites.
Here they come.
Aren't you excited?
Here they come.
Will you be in attendance?
No, I will not be in attendance.
But what if
Good luck
they
to 'em.
won?
If they win, good for them. I can't get in on the Bearcats. I'm gonna cheer for them. I hope they win out, but I know what's gonna happen. They're gonna win this game and they're gonna lose to Houston by 55.
Would that be worse?
What?
I think you'd rather
I'd rather
that than lose this one and beat Houston.
Whoa. No. Wait a minute. Say that again?
Look, you'd rather lose to Houston as your loss that keeps you out than beat Houston and lose to the other crap teams.
I guess, but if my options are lose now or lose later.
Well, I
I'll
guess,
just
just extend your life.
I'll just lose now.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, this season's just kicked me down in the dirt so many times. If they want to beat Baylor tonight, good for them. They're 2-point favorites at home.
Ooh.
Good luck to them. I don't think UC is going to win this game, but I said that against BYU as well. So who knows? There's really no way of knowing. If Jizzle scores 25, they've got a shot. The rest of them, man, the Big 12, I feel like it's having a little bit of a disappointing year. I mean, in a large part because of Kansas, but man, disappointing.
I mean, Kansas was the betting favorite to win the title this season, and they're not even ranked anymore.
Even Baylor's usually a heavy hitter over in that conference. They're 16-11 or whatever they are.
Still 3 top 10 teams sneakily in the Big 12. So,
there are.
Very respectable conference.
Houston never gets the respect I feel like they deserve. I want Houston to go far this year, maybe win a championship.
Houston started 1-2 in the Big 12 in their tenure in the Big 12. They started 1-2 in conference, and all the tweets and everything was, "Oh, this isn't the American anymore, Houston." You know Kelvin Sampson's record since that 1-2 start?
What's that?
30-2.
Really?
In the Big 12.
Kelvin Sampson's one of the best coaches in college
It's not
basketball.
the American anymore, but it's Kelvin Sampson's America. He is, taking over. And I think, and I've seen some Bearcats fans do it takes time to, transition to a new conference. It just sucks when you have Houston, who was on the same timeline.
Yeah.
Like, if it'd be one thing if Houston slowed down with that transition, but they didn't miss a beat. They skipped so many steps and just went right to the top. And Sampson, you're right. I'm a big fan of his. He had the Indiana scandal so early that's kind of followed him around a little bit. But he's killed it at Houston. So
he's been incredible.
But either way.
Their style of basketball, I absolutely love it.
It's one of the best to watch in the entire country.
All right, well, that wraps it up for us on the radio side. Thank you guys for tuning in and hanging out with us until tomorrow. This has been Off the Bench, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube and 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton. Mick Cronin's been fun this year. He's had a lot of fun little press conferences, but he's also just doing what he does, and he just keeps winning no matter what coast he lives on and coaches on at this point.
Win number 500 for old Mick Cronin. So good for him. I'm happy for him. I like Mick Cronin. I know towards the end, the AD didn't want him here any longer. I thought Mick Cronin could at least. I know he didn't win a lot of shootouts, but he could win the other games.
He was your Ryan Day. How cool was that?
Kind of.
Let me.
Well, minus the national
Mick Cronin didn't have
championship,
success in the tournament either, really. So I don't know what coach that would be. Doesn't beat their rival and then also doesn't win in the postseason tournament.
Auburn.
Anyone. But I love Mick Cronin. I'll always have
Harbaugh before cheating.
Harbaugh before cheating.
Yeah,
that's a good one. I'll always have a deep respect for Mick Cronin. I know people don't like the antics. I was just looking at one of my favorite clips of all time. In fact, let me see if I can send that to Casey while I talk about this. It's one of my favorite clips when he talks in the post-game press conference that he's going to bring in the football team. It's just an absolutely legendary thing, and I think he said it during his press conference the other day. He was like, I know I've probably crossed a line or two. I understand that. I haven't been right this whole time, but down the line, if people if players can respect what I've taught them, then I've done my job. So Casey, I've just sent this in there in honor of Mick Cronin's 500th win in college basketball. I'm going to play this clip, but if you look at the UC history, man, once Huggins left, I don't know if there was a set confidence level on who was going to bring this program back, but Mick Cronin brought this program back to relevance for sure. He got prime Big East days, or the prime Big East. He got the American a little bit, and so I'm happy with the way that Mick Cronin was able to succeed at UCLA.
500 wins, but 68.3 win percentage, which is pretty nuts. 296 of those wins came in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So big dent.
It's no 6% like my friend over at Green Bay, but
So like I said, I may call Coach Fickle. We'll see. I don't know if his guys, when they start spring ball, but we'll have tryouts tomorrow, 3 o'clock, to see who gets on. I'm not being funny. 3 o'clock tomorrow, we'll have tryouts to see who gets to go to Memphis. See who gets to get on the plane to go to Memphis. See, the beauty of college is, you can keep your scholarship. But if you're going to get on the plane and represent the team that I coach, you're going to block out. And then you're going to go after the ball. That's not really rocket science. Yeah. Well, yeah, of course. They need to be embarrassed. Just like their coach is. Get your ass whipped, you should be embarrassed. So like I said, I may call.
It's just my all-time favorite. I'll call Coach Fickle, and we'll see who gets on the plane.
I want him to get the Indiana job.
Oh,
I don't know if you leave UCLA for Indiana.
I don't think he has any interest in leaving LA.
All he does is complain about, and I'm not anti him. I'm a Mick Cronin guy.
He's complaining about having to
travel.
Correct. But that doesn't. Him being in the cold permanently doesn't help anything.
Well, he was complaining about the
Indiana's on the road of the Big Ten, though. It would help with the travel more than anything.
I guess, but I think he likes living out there where it's sunny and 75.
Indiana's going to hire Chris Beard anyway.
Yeah. Well,
you want to bet?
No, I'm not going to bet.
That I'm not
going to bet.
Mick Cronin. Mick Cronin and Beard are my top two for that
Chris
job.
Beard is an unbelievable coach. If Indiana hires him, that would be a phenomenal move by them.
But
I will wait for you.
All the media at Indiana, their biggest knock on Woodson and Indiana basketball in recent history is just no accountability, how soft the coaches have been. Mick Cronin is the perfect coach for if that's what media wants and fans want and the program wants. Mick Cronin fits that perfectly. Chris Beard fits that perfectly. I would be a big fan of that for either. Not that I'm a big Indiana basketball guy, but a college basketball fan that has rich history there. I think college basketball is better when Indiana's better.
No question about it. Yeah.
So,
if Indiana wins out, they could get in, right?
I think they're
on the bubble. They just played their way back onto, again, I know we talked yesterday, Lenardi and others, but yeah.
I think they're favored to make the tournament right now.
Really?
Than not, gambling-wise.
They're going to have.
It's going to be very close.
You're playing the Big 10, Big 12. You're going to have all those quad one opportunities down the stretch to play your way under the bubble. You make a deep run in the conference tournament, you'll be just fine.
Over under 5.5 SEC teams getting past the first weekend.
Ooh. I'm going to say over.
Over
under. There's going to be 13 teams in the tournament.
I know. There's going to be so many. I think there's going to be some of those SEC teams that choke.
I don't think you're wrong.
I think there's going to be some of those SEC teams.
Half of them are going to choke.
Yeah. I mean,
the gambling line for SEC teams in the tournament is 12.5.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
God, that's crazy.
It's 12.5. Arkansas is on the bubble as basically a pick 'em.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see what happens. I don't think Kentucky has it this year. Alabama can.
If Kentucky gets healthy, but I don't know if they're going to get healthy. But if they get healthy, they won't lose early.
Yeah.
They're so banged up right now that they would die. Auburn and Florida are going to be fine. Bama has the worry of if you just don't shoot one night,
I was going to say
lose. But they're going to be a 1 seed, I think. So
Yeah.
that kind of nullifies that worry unless you're UMBC.
A&M's good. It's like the old. It's right after A&M is where I think it's like the Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Kentucky. Once you start talking about those teams, it's like, all right, I think there's a clear drop off, and anything can happen once you start playing in those 7, 10, 8, 9 games.
100%. I can't wait to see what happens in the SEC tournament.
Yeah,
every single round of that is going to be a top 8 seed in the tournament, top 5 seed in the tournament.
Yeah.
When you get down in the Elite 8 and Final Four of that tournament, so yeah, it's going to be nuts.
A couple things throughout the week that we didn't touch on, or late last week, and maybe we did, but the Saints, Brandon Staley.
Yeah.
Their defensive coordinator.
I absolutely love it. I think he's an unbelievable DC, what he was able to do in Chicago, L.A., all the way down the line. I think he's great. He's a name I threw out for the Bengals before they hired Al Golden. I think he is talked about poorly because of his clock management as a head coach, and you're not doing that as a DC. So I think it's a phenomenal hire.
And then other news, the one – Aaron Boone. So obviously the Reds end up getting Terry Francona. Thank the freaking Lord. But I had said for years I felt like the timing of the people getting tired of David Bell in Cincinnati and Aaron Boone's time in the Yankees kind of wrapping up. It just felt like they were. I thought Aaron Boone would have been one of the names to look out for to be one of the next Reds managers. I just thought it was kind of trending in that direction. But he ends up getting a 2-year extension with the Yankees. Aaron Boone will be with the Yankees through at least 2027. Surprised that the Yankees extended him. It's not a major extension. I mean, only through 2027. It's a 2-year extension. But again, I could do that again because if Terry Francona is only managing for a short window of time, it still lines up, baby. It's not like I'm advocating for it to happen. I just think there'd be worse managers in baseball to have. The Reds obviously have a much better one right now. This isn't a Boone to the Reds thing, so let's just forget that I said that. Are you surprised, though, with the up and down run that he's had with the Yankees, deep run in the playoffs last year that obviously made his job more safe, but a 2-year extension, are you surprised?
You can't say he hasn't had success because he's had success. I know the Yankees' expectation is drastically higher than the Reds, and I would venture to say if David Bell did what he did, he would have a lifetime extension in Cincinnati. So I know it's different. I know he's got the rock.
David Bell did what Aaron Boone did. He'd be the best 7-year stretch in Reds history.
Correct. He'd have the payroll. He has everything. I understand all of that. I think that if you take him away, what does that do for the Yankees? And I don't think they're in a position to want to take away from their roster as the Dodgers build up a dynasty here. If I were them, I would extend him for longer. I think the players like him. I think he's respected there. I know he hasn't won the World Series yet. I think that's coming. I think the Yankees will win a World Series in the next 5 years, and I think that's going to be in part because I think Boone's a fine manager. I don't think he's the world's best manager. I think he's a fine manager, and I think he's been a part of the reason why the Yankees have had success over the past 5 years.
7 years, 3 division championships, started his tenure with 200-win seasons. They were terrible in the COVID year, then 92 wins, 99 wins, a down year last year or 2 years ago, and then in 2024, obviously, they made the World Series, won 94 games. I don't know how you move on from that manager. I don't know what more you can ask for. Obviously, in New York, you want championships. That's their expectation, but baseball's a hard sport to win. It's hard to get there. There's a level of randomness that comes into play every single year in the playoffs. And the fact that Aaron Boone is getting you to basically over 7 years a floor of about 95 wins is absolutely incredible. And the talent that you have there and how much they appear to like playing for him, this seems like a no-brainer. I always think it's interesting to see how much Yankee fans hate Aaron Boone. And it just really puts into perspective how different every fan base's expectations are in terms of manager success and team success. And we really are just all playing a completely different sport when we talk about small market to major market teams. Because, if we have 200-win seasons in 2018 and 2019, we're still talking about them today.
Yeah.
We're not moving on and maybe firing the managers. So, I always thought it was interesting that he was on the hot seat. I understand the expectations are higher. The goalposts are a little bit further there than they are in Cincinnati, but he's been a successful manager.
Even with the moved goalpost, he's still the only thing he hasn't done, I know, is won the last game of the season. I understand that. I just think that you can't expect to win the World Series every year. You can expect to get to the World Series, and he's done that.
Well, it's a new era in New York. It's the bearded era, and maybe
that's right.
Maybe their luck
will
change. But with the combine this week, Chatterbox Bengals, what we have on the forefront for that?
We'll have an update after Duke and Zach Taylor speak and everything like that. Go over everything that we've learned there. Anything else that comes out about, obviously, T. Higgins as we near the tag deadline. Any other cuts that could bubble up this week. We'll get some content out as soon as we can after any other news like that.
Casey, anything else? You want to do one more yeet before we wrap up the show today?
Absolutely not. No yeeting for me.
He's tired. He was yeeting all night long last night, so he's just a little tired. That's
Wright
all.
State, they got anybody coming up?
They have, baseball. They're playing Miami of Ohio on Chatterbox Sports coming
up
today. It's a beautiful day for baseball.
It is.
But they'll have Cleveland State 9 o'clock on ESPN2 Thursday night. A late one. I might be tired on Friday morning. But
Mr. Wright State himself, Justin Kinner. Tournament team?
Conference tournament team.
Win the Horizon.
Conference tournament team.
Look, they're a weird team because they could beat anyone at the top, but they've lost to teams at the bottom. It doesn't make any damn sense, but we'll see. But
Dougie Gottlieb, I saw you kept tweeting about him yesterday.
I got in trouble, so I took it down.
Oh, did you?
Oh, no.
They said the first time was okay. The second time, now I'm just trying to. I'm like, trying to what? I'm making a point.
Oh, no.
I'm a company guy.
Company man.
I'm a company man.
Oh, no. God.
But
what a shame.
That is a shame.
He's so smug.
And pompous.
And pompous. He's smug and pompous.
Just so you guys know, he's going to win a conference tournament game. I just feel he's going to do something stupid.
It would be very, very funny for this show specifically if he won the whole damn thing.
I would love for him to win the conference tournament.
Him getting into the tournament with 3 wins,
That'd be good for
regular
basketball.
season wins would be hilarious.
That'd be good for basketball.
It would be all time. It would be all time.
If he wins the conference tournament, we just end the show. The show will be done.
Yeah, that's actually fair.
Yeah,
That's
Gottlieb,
fair.
we're done. If Gottlieb wins the conference tournament, we're done.
Fair enough. All right. I'm out. I don't have anything else. Do you guys?
No,
we're
good
good
here.
We have 9 minutes.
Oh, boy.
Man, we're leaving 9 minutes. We start late. We leave early. There you go. All right. That wraps it up for us. Until tomorrow, this has been Chatterbox Sports, 1410 ESPN Radio, and Chatterbox Sports on YouTube.